Hey there! Welcome to Becoming More Me, the podcast for busy-minded entrepreneurs that want to be more and do less. These episodes are here to help you become more of the person you feel called to be in this world, so that the never-ending journey of becoming is not only one that you enjoy being present for, but also that you let it be easy. I'm your host, Teresa Lear-Levine. I'm an EFT master practitioner, hypnotherapist, mom of 4 boys, and international best-selling author of Becoming More Me, helping you to get out of your own way, shed light on your shadows, and step into your power are the things I absolutely love exploring. And today, I have a truly inspiring guest to share with you, Nathan Maingard. Nathan is a transformational guide, a troubadour, and a dedicated explorer of the vibrant and often challenging tapestry of life. His journey is full of music, discovery, and deep personal transformation, and he's going to share some really key insights with us today. So in this episode, we are going to dive into the power of community and authentic connection. We're going to discuss Nathan's journey from being a professional musician to a transformational guide, as well as his profound experiences with plant medicine and the creation of his already free academy. Nathan is going to share how his practices, such as breathwork and ice baths, also shape his daily routine and enhance his well-being. And he's going to give you some great advice on how to add things like this into your routine without it being overwhelming. Get ready to be inspired by this journey, as well as the beautiful ways that Nathan integrates music into his transformational work. Hope you enjoy this episode. It all starts now. Hey, Nathan, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Teresa. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, good. I love to start by getting to know you kind of like personally, like outside of the business realm and everything. Could you tell us a little bit about where you live, who you love spending your time with, some hobbies, some fun interests that you might have, that sort of thing?
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I live in South Africa. I'm from South Africa and have lived here most of my life. I spent a lot of my 20s living in England and briefly in California. And I'm here married to my lovely wife, Carly. We just got married this year.
Oh,
And we live in a little place called Katoomba Eco Village, which is a little sort of very forested eco village on the southeast coast of South Africa. And yeah, I love making music. I love going for walks. I would love to get back into surfing, which is one of my great loves, and I haven't done it in way too long. So those are a few of the things that bring me joy.
are the surfing conditions where you live excellent?
They're good, but there's also a fear of sharks in this area, so slightly less enthusiastic about that.
Yes. I feel like there's fewer and fewer places where you can actually feel like you're getting away from the sharks. I know, like living on the
It's
East Coast in the United States, it wasn't really something that you thought about much, like 40 years ago when I was a kid.
right.
And now, like all up and down the coast, there's pretty much nowhere that they're not. So,
That's
yeah,
terrifying.
maybe. I don't know.
It
I
is
like
for
to
me.
think that generally they don't really want to eat us, but you know, I wouldn't want to come face to face with one either, surfing or otherwise.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what kind of work are you specializing in right now for those who like aren't familiar with your work? Like, what are your passions in what you're doing to help other people? I know we met through a community of coaches and practitioners, so I've gotten to know a little bit of this piece. But for those who aren't familiar, like, what do you enjoy doing?
Yeah, so it's really the simplest way is a transformational guide. And I specifically help people kind of like me, like the highly sensitive people who are awakening or have a sense of consciousness about something beyond the physical, but they often have been misfits from the mainstream. So people who really haven't fitted into the system that's been built for us and who struggle and unfortunately, and this is what happened to me, but have taken on the belief that it's their fault, that there's something wrong with them, that those weird, quirky, unique aspects of themselves that have made them a misfit in our society, that means that there's something wrong with them. And my great joy as a transformational guide is to support people in integrating those parts and realizing that those parts are actually their gifts and their unique offerings that they are here to share with the world, as which is, again, that's also my process, my journey. So on a practical level, we do it through things like coaching, counseling, mentorship, breath work, accountability, And actually my favorite thing, like this is the cherry on top, is with the sort of who work most deeply with me, who sort of do a 3 or 4 month journey. At the end of that process, I write them their own custom heart song, because I was a professional musician for 10 years. I've been writing songs my whole life. And that, to me, like that narrative transformation of having their own song written for them, is like, that's just so juicy. I love it.
I think that's really awesome. I mean, who wouldn't want to have a song written about their journey that highlights, the whole process? That's really cool. Do you accompany that with any particular instruments?
Well, I play guitar and I play ukulele, and then obviously singing. I'm starting to explore a little more of production. So, adding different sounds, doing harmonies over and adding other instruments on the computer. But it's quite new to me. So my last song I actually just did it actually wasn't for a client. It was for a lovely couple who wanted to gift their twins. Their twins were turning 24. And the
Oh,
twins were for the first time off overseas in London, having their own independent life and going through all the ups and downs. And I met them on a retreat that I was facilitating. I met the parents, the dad at least, on a retreat I facilitated, and he heard me play and my whole story, and he was like, this would be the best gift. And so I wrote in the song, and I did a whole production with it, which I've never, like, full band, and it was amazing. It turned out so good. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be doing more of that.
that does sound like an amazing gift and probably an awesome offering that you could be adding to your repertoire of services. Because I think a lot of people would love to be able to give the gift of song to their loved ones for sure. And not everyone has the talent of writing and putting it all together. I know we talked about it briefly in other times when we've chatted. And like for me, that's how like hypnotherapy and EFT and stuff comes in. Like I used to love writing songs and playing music. And not that I wouldn't still, it's just not really where things are right now in my day-to-day life, but I love that I get to do that through the work that I do. And then you're getting to bring that into more of the work that you're doing. So I just think that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What was your journey like getting into doing this kind of work? I think I remember you mentioning things about like your own kind of like depression and kind of coming through things. And what was it like for you?
Yeah, it was it's fine. I'm like smiling as I have this, getting some goosebumps, because I really avoided it as long as I could, which is very funny to think of now. But as a highly sensitive person, I went through a long time of actually numbing myself as much as possible. And that's still one of my shadow pieces, is if I start to sort of overwork or obsess, I will default towards numbing or distraction as a way to like not feel the intensity. But back then it was that same story of, there's something wrong with me, so I need to fit into this society. And anyway, long story short, it took me till my sort of early 20s where I was like, this is not working for me. I don't want to be a part of this society. Like, this sucks. This
Yeah.
way of being in the world that sort of, hey, like no emotions and we're all so cool. And I was like, I feel so differently about life. And so I started this inner journey. And one of the early experiences I had was meeting with a lovely man named Paul, who lives in London. He's a much older man, and he works as a transformational guide. He didn't really call himself that, but that's what he does. And he works with tarot and dream reading and counseling and breath work. And he was, I think, at that point already in his maybe early 60s. And I was sort of in my early 20s. And working with him was just so profound, to be with someone who could sit with me in these really wild and uncomfortable spaces and somehow see into the depths of what I was going through and reflect it so beautifully. And within a very few sessions, he sat with me one session. He said, look, Nathan, I just want you to know that you could do this work that I'm doing. Like, this would be an amazing calling for you. And I just want to say that because it just is important that you know that. And I ignored him completely for 10 plus years. Like, I just completely was like, cool,
Nope,
I'm going to
not for
carry on
me.
doing my own thing. Yeah. And so I did a career as a singer-songwriter, as a musician. And yet I gathering these tools along the way, the tools of the storyteller, the tools of the listener, the reflector, the space holder, like all these different tools and skills that were coming to me through my work as a musician, as a singer-songwriter. Especially, I launched on a Patreon, and I had a very successful Patreon page had members around the world who were supporting my music and paying a monthly amount. We did live streams, and it was this whole beautiful thing. And anytime I would play my music, especially in those at people's homes or in intimate spaces, there was this sense of something magical was happening. There was a transformative element to my songs, because I would always tell stories of the songs and then play the songs, and the songs and this all very vulnerable and truthful and archetypal of the archetypal experience of love, of loss, of growth, of grief, of all these things. And so what started to happen was I would see people have this transformational experience by listening to my music and being in these spaces together. And then they'd kind of carry on with their ordinary lives. Like they would, within 2 or 3 days after the show, they'd have forgotten, they'd be back in the rut of who life expected them to be. And I got this feeling of like, I wish I could help more than that. I wish that I could, if someone comes to that show and then goes, whoa, my heart is opened, I remember who I am, what do I do now? That I could say, I can help. Like, come, like, let's do this work together. You can make this change permanent. You can really move in this thing you're feeling is who you really are. Let's work on that. And let's help that to come through more and more. And so, but I still ignored it because I was change is scary. And I was hooked on the idea of Nathan, the professional musician, the successful professional musician, until I just completely burnt out and had a massive dark night of the soul, depression, just like really, really bad. Fortunately, at the time, I just met my now wife, Carly, and that light of love that I felt for her was one of the big things that called me forward. And yeah, basically through that dark night of the soul, through starting to work with plant medicines and breath work and a morning routine and ice baths and all these beautiful tools, I let go of the music. I let go of that as the career, as the identity of I'm going to be the professional musician. I let go of that. I allowed that to die. And in that dying, I was enabled to be reborn into this transformational guidance, which still includes the music. So it's like win-win. Anyway.
You didn't have to lose that part of your identity that it seemed like you were afraid it was going to go away if you went down this path. So you found an interesting way to keep it. That's really cool. So what has the journey with plant medicine looked like for you? I love going into this question and seeing how it evolves for people, like where they start with it. And then do you lead people through that at this point? Or is it just something that you enjoy using for your own transformation?
I don't lead people yet. I will at some point when I feel that I've got the sort of inner knowing and the relationship with, specifically with mushrooms. They're just such an amazing friend and guide and teacher.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like I'm quite there. I have sat for some friends when they've asked, and my wife and I sit for each other to support journeys at times. I do support people with microdosing because that's been something I've got a lot of experience with and has been massively helpful for me. But my journey was honestly, I was terrified. I didn't want to do it. I was like so scared. It's a scary experience. It is, there's no way around that. But I got desperate, basically. I reached the point. I had sat with plant medicines first as a recreational, like 17, 18-year-old, a little bit of mushrooms here and there with some friends.
That's a little different, I think, than the adult experience.
Very intense. No. And I felt too intense for me. I was like, this doesn't feel like fun in the way that everyone's trying to have fun. Like, this is intense. And so then I was called back to it. And 2010, I think I sat with some ayahuasca a few times, but it like, I couldn't really let go. I was too scared. And I went away from it. And then finally it was like 2019, I think, when I was really at the low point and people were worried about me. Even people in my life who are very like non-mainstream and were saying, maybe you should go on antidepressants, like, we're worried about you. And what happened was I found a psychologist in Cape Town who works with plant medicine, with mushrooms, even though it's completely illegal. It's a Schedule A, Class 1, whatever that is. She would get her license revoked if she was caught. But as she explained to me, for her, it would be immoral to not, because it's so effective. Like, she gets such powerful results for her clients versus, as they say, 10 years or 15 years of therapy. You can have a little bit of like, do some therapy, get comfortable, and then have a session with the mushrooms and just make so much progress. And so that's what I did. I worked with her, this psychologist, for about 3 months. And then I had my first journey with 5 grams of mushrooms, and just profound, like just such a healing process. What was really funny about it was that, I had the ego death, as they call it. I became one with everything. And it was, wow, all the pressure's gone. And I feel so connected and beautiful and enough. And woke up the next day still feeling depressed and confused and lost. And was like, oh, what do I do now? And I actually wrote a song about it called In Every Leaf, which is really beautiful, just about the experience of just being in life. We don't have to get anywhere. That was the lesson for me that time. Was I'm not trying to get somewhere, and just being here is the thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've worked with mushrooms quite a few times since then. And I also then, my mistake that I made, which I don't know how many people make this mistake, but it was certainly one I made. I wanted to heal alone. I wanted to just be me and a therapist, or me and a facilitator, do my journeys, heal, and then I can be with other people. Then they can see the best Nathan that they can be. And actually, on one of the mushroom journeys, the medicine showed me, I say said, but it's in symbols and visions, and but the message was, look at the castle of isolation you have built, Nathan. This is where
Mm-hmm.
you are right now. You've got this castle, you think you're alone, but look, every breath you take sends ripples into all of reality. Every move you make has an impact on your environment, which has an impact on everything else. You are not alone. You've never been alone. So please stop like pretending, stop trying to build that castle and connect. And so soon after that, I was called in to, actually, my psychologist said, there's this group of people who come from the Amazon. They sit with ayahuasca. I really think this could be good for you. Like, would you like to come? And I went and I sat with the Honey Queen here in South Africa and with like a group of 50 people. And I was absolutely terrified, but it was so beautiful. And so, yeah, I've sat with them a few times now.
What
And
was different for
yeah,
you
that's my
mainly
journey.
about that experience in community and in a group versus doing it alone or in a very small?
Yeah, I would say now they have definitely both have their place, and I'm wanting to do a bit more solo stuff going for now, just because I've got some things I want to explore that I wouldn't be able to in a community space. So, but the value I got from in that case was that, for example, if I'm sitting in my place and I fall over to my left, I'm going to hit someone. Like I'm going to land on someone. And by the same token, if I, and it actually, one of the lessons I got was I was purging. So a lot of people know with ayahuasca, there's often you can throw up at times, but it's medicine. It's letting go of the poisons, of the darkness, of the wounds. And I was sort of energetically purging. So nothing was physically coming up, but I was kind of in a head deep in a bucket, like retching. And trigger warning to anyone who has retching issues. But what was happening was that I was so in my victimhood while I was doing it. I was so uncomfortable. I was like, this sucks. And I'm like, this is so bad. Why? I'm having the worst experience. Oh, this is so bad. And then I heard someone across the room retch like twice as loud as me. And it felt like, honestly, like it felt like the medicine had, like that person had done it just to be like, oh, you think you're struggling? I'm really struggling. And it was this, and I just went, oh my God, I'm being such a victim right now. Like I am so in victimhood. And I took a breath and I sat up and I owned my shit. I sat in my pain, in my story, in my history, and I owned my life. And it was I have such goosebumps talking about it. It was such an important moment for me. And it only happened because there was someone else there. There were other people that my behavior had an impact on. And I got to witness that immediately. And then I would hear and then sometimes I'll be sitting up and shaking the rattle and singing the medicine songs and feeling strong and supportive. And the person next to me will be in their buckets purging. And I'm just like, thank you for your work. Like, thank you. Keep going, keep going. And then next thing I'll be that person head deep in the bucket and they'll be shaking a rattle and just like sending all that love. To me, it's like this reminder of, again, communion, community. I'm not alone. I'm with other people. It's okay. And that's the medicine for me, where my wounding happened in isolation. So my healing happens in connection and in community, which I think I mentioned to you before the call. Like this is so
Yeah,
important to me right now, this connection and
absolutely. I
community.
think our deepest and most powerful healing happens in relationship, and community deepens that even further. So, yeah, I really appreciate that. And for those people who are just beginning to explore plant medicine also, and you mentioned the microdosing with the mushrooms, can you explain like what the benefits are to that a little bit better?
Sure. So like
Or what
one of
you've
the
enjoyed
things that
about it
happens,
particularly?
yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that happens with a macro dose, like a big dose of these medicines, is that the part of our brain that's like where our personality lives, the default mode network, it's called, it kind of goes to sleep a little bit. So because that part of our brain is designed to pattern repeat, to save energy. So, for example, if every day when I wake up, I look over and I see my wife and I have to work out, what is this? Who is this? What is our relationship? What is the meaning of this am I lying on right now? What is lying? That whole process that a baby's going through while they form their relationship with reality, the default mode network's got that all worked out, but it has some of that worked out wrong. That's what's crazy. Is like
Yeah.
even if you show a human an image of a face that is concave, so a face that actually goes in instead of out, our brain will go, no, that's not how faces look, and we'll see it. It'll like look like it pops out, and suddenly it'll look like it's coming out, because that's what the default mode network expects. Faces look like this. What that means is that we can see things or believe things or perceive things about reality that aren't true. And so at a big scale, obviously a macrodose, you get that full experience where you really go into that dissolution, you can repattern, and it's amazing. But even with a microdose, what I find when I get the dose right, if it's a little too much, it can be a bit anxiety inducing. So I go very
And
low
what
dose, like
quantifies
0.
itself as a micro or a macro? I think you're actually just getting ready to say this, but just again,
Yeah,
for educating people that may not be familiar at all, like what would be a macro or micro dose?
totally. Totally. So for me, a micro dose specifically means a sub-perceptual dose. So a dose that I can't really tell that I've taken something. It's not
Mhm.
like, oh, there's colors, or, oh, I feel weird and wonky. So a macro dose, I would say, is more where there's like a serious experience happening. That could be at anything from 0.5 of a gram up. But really a microdose is that feeling of like, has actually anything changed? But what I notice changes is it softens that intensity in my mind. So that's the powerful piece. So I take really a fraction, 0.05 of a gram for me personally is a microdose. I started on 0.15 and I just got more and more sensitive over time. And 0.05 is like the sweet spot for me. And that's on a very strong mushroom, by the way. Anyway, so that's a whole other thing. But what I find is that it just softens that part of me that is in a rut, basically the part that is like, life is like this. And I get an opportunity to go, oh, what if life is like that or like that? What if I do this? What if I play with this? Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. And it just gives me a chance to
Yeah.
repattern how I want to show up, how I want to experience life, how I want to perceive life. It just gives me a little more space to breathe in that. So
Yeah.
that's for me
I
what
feel like it opens
microdosing
up the
does.
doorway to like understanding that we assigned all the meaning that anything has in the first place, and we can totally do it
100%.
again if we want to. And like, okay, permission granted. I see it differently now.
Nice.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for all of that information there. And I think that's really helpful because I know a lot of people are, curious and trying to figure out where to start, where to go, what the value is, and why these darn mushrooms are getting so popular these days. So even more so than when we were teenagers. When you're thinking about like the isolation that you used to experience and everything else, and how we've really had this like epidemic of it with COVID and pandemic and everything else. And now I feel like people want community more than ever. How is that playing out for you?
Part of it is we actually moved to a physical eco village, which has its challenges because we don't know how to really live in community. Modern humans actually have lost those skill sets. Fortunately, we can learn them, and I am learning them.
We're talking a lot about community on this episode, so it would be tragic if I failed to mention that I have an awesome, engaged community full of amazing people on the platform known as Skool. That's SKOOL. Again, this is an absolutely free community. However, I do have over $15,000 worth of my most requested and valuable resources right there for you to access, no strings. I also do free coaching in that group every single week. So if you're wanting to understand more about hypnotherapy, emotional freedom techniques, or get great coaching on whatever your current challenges are so that you can achieve next level success with ease, please join me over on Skool. You will find a link to join the community in the show notes here, or if you happen to be on Instagram and you want to send me a DM, you can send me one singular word, community, and I will make sure that you get the link to join the community there. Thanks so much for your interest. Now back to the show.
Those skill sets. Fortunately, we can learn them, and I am learning them. But in my own life, it's bringing me towards is that I've actually started a community at this point. It's just launching right now. It's called Already Free Academy, which is based on the name of my podcast, We Are Already Free, and
Nice.
based on a poem I wrote during the lockdowns, a poem I wrote about being already free. And because so many of us felt so trapped by the system
Yeah.
that wasn't working for us, but was working against us. And it was the poem of me saying, like, that's cool if you want to believe all that fear and all that stuff, but like, we're out here and we're already free. We're hugging each other, we're dancing, we're in nature, like life is good, and like leave us be, basically. And so it's felt like a natural progression, because what I realize is that this mass psychosis, this mass delusion that society is selling, this conditioning that we've all been subjected to by modern society, keeps us separate and keeps us afraid, and what is and isolated. And so the medicine again is community and connection. And so Already Free Academy, in the simplest way, is a way for people who are those conscious, sensitive misfits to come together and start to practice authenticity, to start to practice using their voices, sharing their gifts, having accountability, having vulnerable check-ins, like very basic stuff, but not like basic but profound, basic but the sort of core human needs. And I have a beautiful vision of where this can take us, this little community. And I think humans don't work well in massive community. I think we lose something there. So I think what we need right now is thousands and thousands of communities to form all over the world, online, in person, where there are whatever, 150, 300, 1,000 people in there who are coming together to co-create what's called a parallel structure. So it's a structure that exists within the existing paradigm, because this is the paradigm. Here we are in the society, but it forms within it, but not of it. It's a separate entity that grows and becomes resilient and gives value and fruit to its members. And that when the totalitarian top-down system collapses, which it eventually will, it is eating itself. It cannot maintain or sustain itself, because by definition, it is self-devouring. It must keep eating, and it'll eventually just eat itself. When that happens, these parallel structures blossom. They are the seeds of new community, the seeds of new ways of being in life and new ways of society, really. So I know it's a big vision and a big hope, but the more I learn about community, which I'm studying deeply right now, the more I realize that community is such a powerful medicine. Like, it's where the change happens, is when we get together with people like us to talk about how do we show up more fully and more holistically in our lives and in the world. And so that's what Already Free Academy is for. And I'm very excited.
I love that. And I'm sure you'll give us information on where people can find that or join you on that, because that sounds like an amazing place to be. I don't know. I'm curious for your journey. Like, I think with a lot of coaches, therapists, and practitioners, we often start in kind of that one-on-one-ville, and then we kind of branch into the valuing of community. It doesn't typically happen the other way around. Was it that way for you too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've always enjoyed groups because I came from being a musician. So sharing with a group and being in a group situation as a facilitator in those spaces. But I have, as a coach, since I started working more as a coach, that's been very much one-to-one. And now I'm seeing the potential in this community that I'm just building. Like, oh my gosh, this opens so much up, because what happens is, this is the beauty and the magic of it, is that if we're in a group setting and someone brings what they feel like is such a personal and unique challenge or block that they're experiencing, they're like, this is my truth. You'll have so many people in that circle be like, yep, me too.
The
And
law
that's
of
the magic.
one.
Yeah, exactly. There's no like, and so suddenly they go, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not weird. I'm not isolated. I belong. These people get me. And that is like, oh, immediate healing, immediate integration. In a way, it's like easier than one-to-one, because they get to see themselves reflected more honestly in more other people.
Yes. I think over the years of doing a lot of different programs that were one-on-one and group, like myself as a participant, I've
Mm.
probably had more impactful healing transformation in the group work, even though I was definitely more resistant to it. I always wanted to kind of go for that like
Yeah, me
silver
too.
bullet of like one-on-one faster, let's just get this done. Nobody needs to know kind of thing. And then like when you actually get down to the vulnerability and the authenticity of sharing and receiving in group, it's like, whoa. But I think there's like a part of me at least that used to think that I wouldn't relate as much, or that because their issue wasn't exactly what my issue was, that I was somehow wasting my time.
Yeah, I feel
And
that. I resonate with that a lot.
yeah, and I know that's not true.
Yeah.
But I think that's also,
Yeah.
and when I work with my one-on-one clients, that's usually what I hear back from them also is like, oh, I might come to group calls, I might not. I'm here for what we can do together, just you and me. And I'm like, oh, I want you to like pull the lever on like just opening it up a little bit more, and getting yourself a little bit more uncomfortable and getting to understand that value of community. Where have you found yourself studying more and learning more about community lately that's been lighting you up?
Well, the one place that was just from example was in the group that we were a part of together, the community, just seeing how that dynamic creates so much momentum and and what's funny, this is one of my frustrations that I'm still like still letting go of a little bit is that I've wanted to form a community like this since I don't know how many years ago, because my page, I could see how valuable it was for the people who were my patrons to connect with each other. But Patreon doesn't really facilitate that in a real, like in flowing way. And I didn't understand community. I was like, I think they should all connect more, but why? Like, why does that matter? And I just kind of left it. So doing it now, or seeing that example in the world, and now hearing more and more people speaking about how important community is, I'm like, yes, I was right. I should have listened to myself all those years ago. Like, I've wasted all this time. But now I've really like gone in deep. I've committed. So there's a few books. There's Get Together, I think, is one of them. There's another one called The Business of Belonging. And the one that's really just speaking to my heart right now is called The Art of Community. And it's like the 7 principles that every community has or needs to be aware of. And he's coming at it from my kind of direction, which is very spiritually oriented. I believe he was educated as a pastor or as some kind of theologian. So very much spirit and heart oriented, but so clear and so sensible. Like, these are the critical pieces. This is why community is so important. And these are the pieces you need to have in your community for them to really thrive. And it's speaking to me on every level. I feel completely 100% aligned with this way of showing up as a leader, as well as someone who's called to serve others. What better way than supporting them and coming into community? I really feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. Is the one that you're referring to the one by Charles Vogel?
Yes.
Okay, I've read that one too. I was just like
Oh, nice.
Googling it to see if it was the same one. That's a great
Yeah.
one for anybody that's looking to learn about community for sure. I've read that one as well. That's awesome. And how do you like to incorporate the different practices that you mentioned before, like breath work and ice baths and meditation, into your daily routine for people who are looking to, maybe add them into theirs?
Well, I think the first piece is, if you're listening right now and you don't have a morning routine, then I would say start ridiculously small. Like, habits are dangerous when we get excited and we go, oh, I want to do all the things they're doing. And I'm going to do this
Yes.
1.5 hour morning routine. And it's going to be the best thing ever. And the default mode network, that part of your brain, just is like, this is crazy. We're changing too fast. Hit the brakes. I don't ever want to do this again. So that would be my first piece, is start with like 5 minutes or 1 minute or 30 seconds, whatever it is that you can do every day consistently, again and again and again, and just start there. But then from there, for me personally, right now, the foundation is breath work. Like, that's the non-negotiable. That's the one piece to just sit down and do, even if it's 5 minutes of breath work every day. Anything else that comes after that is a bonus. I do some brief movement workouts, some movement exercise. When I'm like really deep in flow and it's all aligning and I'm waking up early enough, which for many would sound ridiculous, but for me, it really does make my life feel so much better. It's
Makes
like
mine feel
between
better
four,
too.
it does. Like, it's, people go, I don't have time. I'm like, well, are you going to bed early enough and waking up early enough? Because you could probably find a lot of extra time. Like, how much time do you watch stuff in the evenings? So for me, the ideal is between 4 and 5 in the morning.
Me
And then
too.
the morning practice is anything from an hour to 2 hours, honestly, depending on what is in flow for me. So that can be like the perfect flow. My perfect morning flow is wake up, splash my face, do some journaling, just let some thoughts out, give some gratitude, give some thanks, move into some kind of movement. So stretching, warming the body, then into a breath work, then into an ice bath, then into some kind of strength training. And for
Mm.
me, that combination, oh my word, like when I do that, I have more energy for everything else in my life. Like, I just become more available. And
And
so
how long does
it
that
sounds like a
typically
lot.
take? The perfect morning routine? What's the amount of
So the
time
perfect
commitment
morning,
for that?
it's about an hour and a half.
It's not bad.
A,
Not bad at
yeah.
all. I don't know. I love to
So,
get outside first thing in the morning, like as long as the
well,
weather's
oh, it's all
nice.
pretty much all outside, like for
Yeah,
sure. I
perfect.
watch the sunrise from the deck, like
Hmm.
it's that morning sun, and everything's so quiet. The energy, and actually, I know in some traditions, I believe in the Taoist traditions. In a book I read, they talk about the time between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. is the time that the chi is rising from the earth very powerfully. So that's the time that is best for energy practices, because you just get so much more out of them from the earth, which I
Yes.
thought was beautiful. And I do notice that, like, if it's in that quiet, dark, awakening, sunrisey time, something's different. Like, it feels different. So
It definitely does. This is my favorite time to get outside for sure, especially this as we're recording this, we're heading into the summer months here on the East Coast in the US, and I am not a huge fan of the crazy heat and the direct sun. So the earlier I can get outside and enjoy being outside without like massively sweating or feeling like I'm going to pass out, that's a bonus for me. Well, this has been amazing, Nathan. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about all of these kind of random yet connected topics. Where can people find more of what you're doing and join your community?
So the community side, the easiest is to go to alreadyfree.me/academy. So that's where you'll find the kind of a little more info about the community as a whole, alreadyfree.me/academy. For me, you could go to just alreadyfree.me. Actually, that'll take you to my website, but specifically to the podcast page where my We Are Already Free podcast lives. And that's a good starting point with like diving a little deeper into my world and getting to know me. And then there's obviously links to my Instagram and all the other things on there. But yeah, alreadyfree.me or alreadyfree.me/academy. Those are the two best spots right now.
That's awesome. And I know we recently had a little fun doing some hypnotherapy together. Would you be willing to share a little bit about your first experience doing hypnotherapy?
Absolutely. No, it was amazing. I mean, I actually meant to say that to you even before we started the call, but how, because it's, in a way, it's subtle but impactful, is that I felt like I was saying with microdosing, it's like microdosing softens a part of my brain and allows me to think differently. It's like the same thing. It's where I've just noticed like not much has changed in how I show up in my life. There's a lot of things that are still challenging. There's a lot of this and that, but I'm just feeling a little happier about it all. I just have a little more space. I feel a little more like, cool, well, this is life and it's okay. Instead of it being this like, this heaviness that I started picking up and carrying. So I loved it. It gave me a lot of insight and actually empathy for myself. I think that was one of the key takeaways, was going into those aspects of my own history, my own story, and understanding, it makes total sense why I would do these patterns, why I would keep playing out these patterns. And in that understanding, there's an opportunity to do it a different way, to just be like, I see you, I recognize you, I love you, I know why you're here. It's okay. Let's do it this way instead. So yeah, thank you. It's really awesome. I enjoyed it so much.
That's amazing. I love hearing that. And I love when it's shared, because so many people have never been in the state of hypnosis that they are aware of, even though we're all in it every single day, in and out. But a lot of people are like worried about it, or think it's going to be, strange, or that I'm going to somehow take control over their mind or whatever else. And that's not how it plays out at all. So I think when we can share these experiences more and people can realize how like opening it is, like you said, like it's not like huge things have changed, but I think honestly, the biggest thing has changed, which is the way that you feel about it. And when we can change the way that we feel about any situation, then automatically we start showing up differently. Things start changing, everything starts lining up. And no matter what, if we're feeling better about it, who cares? That's kind of what it comes down to at the end of the day. If we're happy and we're not bothered by the situation and the circumstances of our lives, then all is well.
Yeah, definitely. That makes total sense. I mean, it really, just that extra kindness to myself and therefore kindness to the world is invaluable. So yeah, thanks again.
Yeah, you're most welcome. And thank you so much for being here. Are there any closing thoughts or anything that you'd like to share as we wrap up the episode?
The quote that I'm speaking and thinking a lot at the moment is by Jiddu Krishnamurti. And he says, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." And I definitely, for all of us who have felt like there's something wrong with us because we don't fit into the society, that's awesome. Well done. That means that you're awake and that you're aware and you're not well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, and you have the calling and the invitation to be part of a healthy society. And that's amazing. So that's what I'd leave you with.
I love that. That is a perfect way to wrap this episode up. Thank you so much for being here. And for all of you listening, I know you have so many choices when it comes to podcasts. Thank you for choosing Becoming More Me. Thanks for spending some of your precious time with me today. If you loved this episode, please leave a review or simply share it with someone else who would get great benefit from it too. If you share on social media, please tag me so I can personally connect and thank you. Until next time, keep taking bold and brave steps towards becoming more of who you want to be in this world. You are capable, you are worthy, and you are enough. And if your inner critic is still trying to argue with those facts, hit me up. We've got work to do.